CataractCoach.com, podcast series, episode number 177 with Dr. Richard Mackool, a gifted surgeon and global pioneer in cataract surgery teaching. Literally teaching thousands of ophthalmologists over many decades, including me. He's one of my idols. Welcome back to our Cataract Coach podcast. And today I've got a very special guest. Someone who's been a mentor to me remotely for decades, and that is Dr. Dick Mackool from New York. Welcome, my friend.
So glad to be with you. And let me congratulate you for this series, magnificent number. What a library of work you put together here. I know what it's like to do teaching and educational videos. Your heart's got to be in it. And
absolutely.
You have a big heart to do the number you've done. So way to go.
Well, absolutely. Well, we can talk about so many things, but you've also been instrumental in this. I would read, you had a column every month called Phaco Tips, where you teach a pearl about cataract surgery, things that no one I used to start reading it when I was a resident, and no one in my residency taught me all those secrets. You did.
You know, it's a nice little story. When I went into medicine as an intern, there'd be things that in medical school I couldn't remember. So I took a little book and I carried it around in my white jacket, and it was called the Red Book. And I just wrote everything that I couldn't remember, complex perhaps, whatever. And then whenever I came across something, I said, oh, I got it in my pocket. When I became director of resident training, every week I sent the residents some information, new information from them from my Red Book. They referred to it as the Red Book. Then when I became a practicing ophthalmologist and got into education, I said, you know what? I should be doing this. What should I call this? Phaco Tips. That'll work. So 1990, I started doing that. That's 36 years ago. And I did about 233 of those, one a month. That's a number.
Right.
And put them out there for people to read. And yeah, I'm glad you liked them.
It was so useful to me. Now, people need to stop for a second and think, in my operating room today, so much of what I do is because of you. I use the Mackool tip on my phaco machine, right, on my handpiece.
Yeah.
The fluidics you did, you had the idea of putting having even a vitrectomy ability in the phaco machine before the machines couldn't do anti-vitrectomy.
I did.
You changed the idea of a closed incision so you don't have a leaky eye. I mean, the phaco sleeve. Where do we even start?
Yeah, the acrylic IOL too. I did that one. Well, necessity is the mother of invention. And I think almost all of us recognize inadequacies in our environment.
Okay.
But sometimes you have to take the leap and attack it. Henry Kissinger was a patient of mine, a lovely man, and he is a very disarming fellow. And he would say to me, and he did one day, he said, Dr. Mackool, what is your secret? Okay, just like that. Okay. He's going right to the bottom line. And I thought for a minute and I said, Henry, I was naive enough to think I could do it.
That's great advice. That's great advice.
Yeah, because you got to take a leap. Try anything once. Oh, not everything. Come on, there's some common sense. Don't walk on the edge of cliffs. But if you're not into experimentation on a daily basis, sometimes an hourly basis,
right,
you're going to miss a lot in life. It's just the way it is. And now that brings me to perhaps my favorite story. I got a lot of them over the years. They gave me the Innovators Award at ASCRS some years ago. The title of my presentation was Humans, Happiness, and the Wonder of New.
Okay.
And I told this story, and I'm happy to tell it to you and your audience now in case they weren't there. And it goes like this. 33 years ago, 32, 3, my then 3-year-old daughter, my youngest, was sitting in her car seat in the back of the car. Mm-hmm. And I'm driving along, musing, talking out loud as I do anyway, because then I get to listen to myself and decide if I said anything worthwhile. And I say to her, honey, I think people are happiest when they're learning new things. And she says to me, Daddy, everything's new to me.
Ah,
I was like, out of the mouth of babes. Are you kidding?
all right.
No wonder why kids are so happy. They're running
Yeah.
around barefoot on the grass.
Yeah.
They're chasing grasshoppers. Everything's new to them. We tend to lose that over the years. You
Mm,
know, you got to pay a water bill. You know, you got to do stuff,
right.
right? But you got to keep looking for that magic because that's the great pleasure in life. It really is. So I learn a lot when I teach.
Sure.
Um, and I'm just telling you, in your own life, do it.
I think it's fantastic advice. Yeah, keep learning. Make sure you learn something new every day. That obviously will bring you happiness. And then always just take the leap. That's
Oh,
probably great advice.
oh yeah. It's it's good for the heart and the soul, I'll tell you.
Right. Now, how you have like an engineering mindset, like the way you came up with all these things in, let's say, for cataract surgery or even the rest of the eye. How do you think like this?
So, you know, Tiger Woods took up golf at the age of 3.
Okay.
He became pretty good at it. Um, if you let your curiosity run wild and you have some person in your life who leads you to explore, okay, now I'm going to get to my dad. So, my father, when I was a young boy, had been an automobile mechanic and he liked to take things apart. So, he and I literally would take an automobile apart and remodel it, put it back together again, fix all the moving parts.
Wow.
So I hands on learned engineering. I learned Venturi systems. I learned internal combustion. I learned how what a transducer is. All it does is convert one form of energy to another,
Mhm.
electrical to mechanical. You know, you look at an automobile. Wow. I mean, we're taking something that came out of the ground, make it a liquid, and turn some wheels,
Yeah.
and then go anywhere we want.
All
How
right.
can you not be amazed by this, right?
For sure.
So I did an engineering apprenticeship for 15 years,
All right.
you know, and when I went for my interview for college, the fellow said to me, so tell me, what do you do after school? I said, I fix cars. He says, you fix cars? I said, yeah, I've been doing that since I was a little kid. I fix cars. Yeah. He said, well, what do you do on Saturday? I said, I go to work, but I'm a butcher in my uncle's meat market. He said, you do that on Saturdays?
Mhm.
He says, you know, we got a new program here. I think it'd be good for you. It's called a 6-year medical program. I
Huh?
think you should go into that. And I said, put me down for that. That's how I went into medicine. I
Wow.
mean, you know, right place, right time, fertile ground. You need some luck. Charlie Kellman and I were dear friends. We played golf together all over the world. And Bill Barton, who was responsible for a lot of the Alcon success, let me give him some credit here. I hope he watches this someday. We're driving along, going to play golf together one day, and he's driving the car, and he says, I'm here with Charlie Kellman and Dick Mackool. I got to ask you this. He said, how did you do it? And I thought, and I said, it's mostly luck. And Charlie said, absolutely right. It's mostly luck. So we all get some shots at luck.
Right.
Carpe diem, go for it. When
Right.
it comes on your doorstep, say, ooh, I'm attracted to this. And that brings me to my Will Rogers story, who said, I never knew a man I didn't like. The same thing is true in our specialty. You really want to get that kind of, not necessarily engineering knowledge, right? But you want to have some physical knowledge. I mean, look at phaco.
Okay.
It's perhaps as marvelous as the internal combustion engine. Look at what it is. We're the water planet here. We're using hydrodynamics to make what's called in engineering a closed hydraulic system. That's how your brakes work in your car, folks. All right, a closed hydraulic system. What does that mean? It's very easy to learn that, especially if you've got a lab. And that's where I think our residencies programs could do a bit of a better job to have farm those first year residents out for, a 3-hour course 3 times in their first couple months to learn about some of these physics that they're going to be involved with. When they begin to know that and understand it, you know what happens with things you understand? You love them.
Right.
The things you love most dearly in your life are the things you understand and know the most. That old house from childhood doesn't mean a damn thing to anybody else.
Right.
You drive by it and it's a big thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what you need. That's the word foundation, folks. That's what you got to get. So dream big and often, and you'd be amazed. The kid I was, I never thought I'd wind up getting to do the stuff that I did in my life. It's shocking to me.
Right. But it's also hard work. 'Cause I always say, right, the harder I work, the luckier I get. Funny how that works out.
It is. But you know what? When you love it, it's not work.
Yes, it's fun.
Yeah, it's more than fun. It's pleasure. It's learning. That's where we came in. How much joy.
Right.
Yeah, find it. I pity the people. And now let me just say, we love our kids more than anything. They have to be not doing this all day.
On the phone.
It's not good for them.
Yeah.
They have to be out there in this world,
Right.
seeking pleasures, learning, and doing what humans must do, which is colliding with other humans all the time. It's what makes us unique in this ridiculous universe that we can't even comprehend.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, let me now throw in something about the universe. What's in our brains is incomprehensible. We've got 86 billion neurons in there with tens of trillions of synapses.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa. And our specialty, guess what? Almost half of them, about half of them, are devoted to either vision or vision connecting to our other parts of our brain to tell it what to do.
Right.
No wonder why vision's so damn important. The optic nerve has 1 million nerve fibers in it. Each optic nerve, 1 million nerve fibers. The acoustic or auditory nerve has like 30,000 to 1 million.
Yeah.
I wonder why people say, doctor, I'd rather be dead than blind.
Yeah,
Hear
for
that?
sure. We all hear that. Yeah, of course.
My good, yeah. So how much pleasure can you take in bringing sight back to somebody who'd rather be dead than blind?
Right.
You talk about pleasure. You talk about the joy of communal human experience. It doesn't get much better than that.
Right.
And we in ophthalmology, look at all the leadership we've done in medicine. It's incredible, all this stuff. And some of our ophthalmologists have become incredible people in the whole world. We have been blessed to either stumble or somehow select this specialty. We're not dealing with, I don't want to say anything derogatory about the other specialties. They're very important. But boy, we are right up there, folks.
How did you choose ophthalmology when you were in medical school?
It's a very, very good question. I knew people there's some doctors ahead of me who had gone into ophthalmology, and they were extolling its virtues. So I said, boy, I don't know anything about this. I gotta look into this.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, how am I going to look? I'm going to start subscribing to those journals. So I subscribed to every journal in ophthalmology when I was a medical student.
Wow.
And I started reading all of them. And it was like, whoa, this is another world.
It is.
This is not what I know. What
Mhm.
is this? So then I went to the clinic and I looked at the residents and I said, what are you doing with that thing? It's a microscope, isn't it? They said, yeah, we can look right inside the eye and we can see all this stuff. I said, can I look? Yeah. I take a look. I go, my God.
Yeah.
This is the first organ other than the skin that I'm like, I can see all of it.
Right.
This is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. I need more of this. So
Right.
comes our 5-month elective period in third year medical student. And people are taking cardiovascular surgery and neurosurgery and they're standing up all night holding retractors and
Mhm.
stuff. And I said, ophthalmology. I took my whole 5-month elective in ophthalmology.
Wow.
I did. And I learned so much. After 2 months, the resident said, kid, you take care of the clinic. We're going to the Red Sox game. We're going to go operate. So I began to run the clinic at the Boston VA hospital all by my little third year medical student self.
Right.
And I was looking at eyes and I had all these wild ideas about stuff. And yeah, never looked back.
Wow. Now tell me how you came up with some of these engineering ideas. Like we talked a little bit about stopping incision leakage or coming up with the idea of making a non-leaking phaco sleeve. Why the flared tip, what the physics are in that, why does that work?
Okay, sure. So first of all, it doesn't matter what in the world you do. You don't have to be an engineer to know what I'm about to say.
Okay.
It's a lot easier to work on something if it's not moving.
Okay. Sure. Of
Okay.
course.
So that's why we use desks for paper, right? We don't try to write on paper up here. We put it on a desk.
Of
Okay.
course.
Basic thing. All right. So if you do any eye surgery at all back then, first thing you learned was, wow, everything's moving all over the place. The eye's changing its shape,
Yeah.
you know, the fluid's going here and there, pieces going here and there. This is not any way to run an airline. You got to make things be still. You
Right.
got fluid coming out of the incision. You got pressure changes. Back to my automobile. You can't have a leaking gas tank. You can't have a carburetor that has a leak in it. You can't have that and have it work. Well, pretty basic to me. I got to seal that incision before we do anything else.
Mhm.
Anything else. All the other stuff, all these fancy little things you could do up in the console, doesn't mean a damn thing. If that
Right.
incision's leaking, you got no control. All right. Pressure is volume. Direct relationship. Well, how am I going to seal that thing? So back then, this is now in the late 1970s. Back then, the big problem was burning the incision. If you brought the incision tight, we were burning incisions anyway, even without having them tight. Because
Make it tight, it'll burn more.
Oh, yeah. So definitely, because then you increase the friction between the sleeve, which is transmitting the vibration from the ultrasonic needle to the tissues. Oh, but that's all you need is friction. Take sandpaper, do this.
Sure.
Rub your hands together, you can make some heat. Indians started fire that way, right?
Yeah.
It's called heat. Okay. So I said, all right. I was doing vitreoretinal surgery. I started doing that immediately after Mackool. I was doing open sky vitrectomy because I was a corneal surgeon. And that's where I started. I ran the corneal service at the New York Eye and Ear Infirmary in the 70s. And open sky penetrating keratoplasty because we were ruining corneas all the time.
Huh.
So we were busy doing that. So then came vitrectomy units, O'Malley's, whatever. We started doing that open sky. So I learned, vitrectomy, but it's open sky, not very controlled. Then Mackool says, hey, I can stick this thing through the pars plana and do this. I start doing that. I'm going, boy, this is a lovely procedure. I can do this because I know vitrectomy stuff. This is a lovely procedure. We've got a backlog of diabetics with vitreous hemorrhage, for decades.
Right.
We're suddenly taking the blind and making them see. And I say to myself, this is terrific, but look how nice and stable everything is in here. I mean, the vitreous volume is about 5 cc's. The anterior chamber volume is between 1/10 and 2/10 of a cc in a myope. And here we are with the volume doing this in the anterior chamber, and all these critical structures, iris, cornea, or posterior capsule, are traumatized or potentially so. So I said, I know what I'm going to do. Let me put a rigid infusion sleeve. And the first one we did was stainless steel,
Okay.
concentric to the phaco tip. Now the vibrating tip can't hit the steel, right? So you can't create friction. Round. Okay, eureka moments in our life, folks. We all have some. Every so often, by the way, go back and revisit them in your head. It's good for it's good karma. Okay, so my first eureka moment, besides looking through that slit lamp, I think, was the first time I took that rigid sleeve and cranked it, because you had to, because it's round.
Sure,
The
sure.
incision is elliptical. So you gotta kind of crank it in. I cranked it in there, and the anterior chamber did that and stayed there. And I said, eureka.
Yeah.
I found it. Now, the problem with that was mechanical, because to crank it in, it's too tight. So every time you moved it, the eye moved. So you had to always have a second incision and always have an instrument in it to hold the eye still.
Yeah.
During everything. And a lot of surgeons with bimanual skills, okay, didn't mind. But for some others, it could be an issue.
Sure.
So on we went. And then one day I thought to myself, wait a minute, I know what. Let me put a silicone sleeve around that rigid sleeve. Silicone has a low coefficient of friction. It means it's slippery, okay? So it'll slide through, and it also assumes an elliptical shape. Okay, so it seals it. It doesn't have to be real tight. Okay, and the metal sleeve is still in there. And then after that, I realized, well, it doesn't really have to be metal, just low coefficient of friction. It can even be free. Well, what's a low coefficient of friction? I know those things. I fooled around with that stuff. There's all kinds of things in automobiles where you don't want friction, believe me. Valves moving up and down, stuff. I said, I know what. I could coat it with molybdenum. Molybdenum is very slippery, but that's a little tricky. I could just use polypropylene sleeve. That's slippery stuff. Let's put it in there and do some thermal studies. And we did. Worked. But that made it too big. So I said, wait a minute. I'd already, I got a call from a company making a Venturi phaco during that time. They said, we got a big flow rate problem. The flow's too high at a low vacuum. We can't control the flow. You know how to do that? I said, sure. That's not hard. I know how to do that. I'll show you. So I showed him. How do you do that? You taper the tip. Okay, so what do you have now? You have a restriction.
Okay.
You have a narrowing. So the flow goes down.
Right.
All right, so, wow. Okay, so I said, well, but let's seal your phaco incision too. Let's do this. I'm going to seal it for you. I'm going to give you a combined rigid sleeve, silicone sleeve around it, a whole package. We'll call that microseal. And that became that particular unit. It was this American Cyanamides company called Stores.
Yeah.
And those things kind of went crazy in the industry. So that's how I did that. The combination of how do you control the fluidics? How do you control the thermodynamics? But I've described it to you in 10 minutes.
Right.
All right. It is not rocket science, but it's somebody naive enough with some background knowledge who said, hey, I think I could do that.
Right.
So I did.
And then how do you address the issues of now surge, where you have a little bit too much bounce in the anterior chamber, a little bit of surge? How do you address that?
Okay. So elasticity is the enemy in a closed hydraulic system.
Okay.
All right, that sounds like a pretty big engineering phrase, but wait till I describe it to you. It's simple as hell. Water is not compressible.
Correct.
The water molecules are too tightly packed. You can't compress them. But what is compressible? Air Oh, yeah. You can put the pressure in your tires up to, I keep going back to cars. I love it. You can, to anything, right? You can
Right.
go real high, you know. And tubing. Tubing can be compressible. Ooh, air compressible tubing. The enemy.
It's a rigid tubing.
Uh-huh. So we need to use rigid tubing. But wait, why are we using soft tubing? Well, doctor, because we have these peristaltic rollers, and if the tubing's not soft, they don't work. You can't compress the tubing. Dummy. Well, wait a minute. We only need soft tubing where the rollers are.
Right.
The rest can be hard tubing. See, the engineers know all this stuff, of course, but they don't know what we know.
Right.
Eyeball. They don't know what's going on down there.
Sure.
So they know what they can do, but they don't know what we need. We know what we need, but most of us don't know what they can do.
Mhm.
But I knew what they could do. So I could speak the dual language, if you will. So in days, we changed all this. But now go to the other side, the infusion side. It can never have too much what we call infusion potential.
To make
You
the
always
tubing
want,
bigger.
yeah, not just bigger, but flexible.
Uh-huh.
Because when everything stops in that closed hydraulic system, pressure will build in the infusion line because it can't go anywhere, right? So it builds in that infusion line. And when you suddenly remove fluid, guess what happens? It's like a bellows. You know those old things.
Sure.
The infusion line, which is expanded, contracts. Ooh. So now you got fluid going in plus a boost to the fluid going in by the contraction of the infusion line. And then when I decided after a fashion, wait a minute, that's nice. We got a bottle. This is stupid. Why do we have a bottle up there? We don't have to have a bottle. I put a hole in the ceiling of my OR.
To make it higher, have a higher bottle height.
Yeah, I did. And guess what I did? So my waiting room was up there.
Okay.
So I put a planter up there so that people couldn't see the bottle that was up inside of the base of a planter. How's that for crazy? But, mother of necessity. Anyway, I'm thinking to myself, look, we can do the same thing with this restitution, if you will, elasticity, coefficient of elasticity, all these nice big words, but it just means the thing contracts when the fluid moves out. We do the same thing when we deliver infusion. We can put some plates around an infusion source. And now we've got much better electronics. We used to have these chips you used to have to carve manually. Oh boy. Now they print them out the size of you can't even see them. I said, we can do all this electronically. We can sense the pressure here and know that we need to do this. It's like raising a bottle up and down.
Dynamically.
Would no one ever do.
Yeah.
Plates, we can control infusion pressure. So now we had controlled the surge outflow by having rigid tubing and no more soft tubing all the way. We went to the other side and increased our infusion capacity. Phaco became a gazillion times easier and safer.
Right.
We used to have posterior capsule rupture rates, and this is after capsulorhexis. Before capsulorhexis, the tears into the posterior capsule were a dime a dozen. Mm-hmm. They happened all the time. Everybody put it in the sulcus. We were doing that anyway, the IOL. So we had posterior capsule rupture rates that were 10%.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, once we got these fluidics down, I mean, you started talking about them in thousands.
Right.
Yeah. How's that?
Yeah, you're very well known for documented posterior capsule rupture rate of less than 1 in 1,000. And a lot of that is what you explained with the fluidics and your technique, but also you had a very clever way of doing this 180-degree viscodissection.
Yeah, viscodissection is a nice story. So here it goes. My son, who was originally a plastic surgeon, decides he wants to be an ophthalmologist, and he's spending time in the OR with me, and I'm doing a congenital cataract. And in the congenital cataract, as you know, we do hydrodelineation, remove the nucleus. But then I would always do viscodissection of the remaining epinucleus with the presumption that the posterior capsule was open. And if it was, hey, sure. Yeah. So I did it. I'm doing it. I'm explaining it to him. He says, Dad, why don't you do viscodissection in every case? Mm. It's like that 3-year-old in the back seat telling me, everything's new to me, Dad. I'm thinking, damn, that makes sense. I'll have a barrier there.
Right.
And that barrier, you use an OVD that stays in one place. They're, the types that come out easily and the types that don't. So we use one that will remain in position. And you know what those are.
Sure.
So I said, but we got to prove this. Let's see what our PC rupture rate is when we use viscodissection and when we don't. Well, I'm not going to stop using viscodissection. The kid just put me onto something. But I've got a backlog case history of what my rate of rupture was. Okay. And it went from 7 per 1,000 to 1 per 1,000.
Wow.
Pretty good.
Really good. Huge improvement.
Yeah. Well, I would never look back and never do a case without doing viscodissection.
You also had some other really brilliant ideas, like your the famous Mackool big ball chopper, the chopper that had the big ball on the tip.
Yep. Yeah. Well, choppers, they started with, was it Tommy Nagahara? Yeah, Nagahara. Thank you. Yes. Yeah, it started chopping. And that was, terrific. And right away, I said, wow, this is really cool. We can take this nucleus apart in seconds instead of minutes. Mm-hmm. That's good. So, but then I started looking at the designs and I said, ergonomically, mechanically, these don't make sense. You want to have a tip on these that if you rub it over the posterior capsule, say, so what?
Right.
How do you do that? That's pretty obvious how you do that. You put a nice big round end on it, mm-hmm. Right? A non-snaggable tip. And then it depends on the surgeons, the way they use their left hand. A straight one works for some surgeons, and a curved one works better for others. It's just how high they want to elevate their wrist. Yeah. If you use a straight one, you got to really, I call it verticalizing the chopper. When I taught my son, yeah. He said, Dad, that was the most important thing you ever said to me about, dividing a nucleus, when you told me to verticalize the chopper. Yeah. They were all straight then. Then I went to the curved one. You don't have to verticalize it as much, whatever. So, but that was pretty simple, mechanical engineering. You look at the shape of the object you want to get around and what you want the thing to protect. And you go, yep, I could do that.
Right. You had other great little pearls too. I once had the pleasure of operating side by side with you at the Singapore National Eye Center exactly 20 years ago in 2006, I think it was.
I remember that.
I was doing surgery for BNL for Life Surgery Event. You were doing it for Alcon. And you had such a brilliant idea. He said, no, when you make the side port, he says, which way should you orient your blade? He says, to guard against the patient's bell phenomenon. Explain this to our listeners. I thought it was brilliant. I never thought of it.
Well, I often say to patients, how do you think I know that?
Learn the hard way.
A lot of things I learned the hard way, but the best way to learn the hard way is learn it only once.
Yes.
Don't keep relearning the hard way. Okay. So I know from making incisions in patients' eyes for various things, as do you, that sometimes they'll get a Bell's phenomenon, especially if the anesthesia isn't so wonderful, but they can get one anytime, sure. Squeeze their eyes, whatever. And so you want to guard against that. And since our side port blades have a sharp side and a dull side, By the way, don't use, in my opinion, and of course, everything's in my opinion. You're all free to reject it. But as I like to say, hey, look, you tuned in this podcast. Now you got to listen. Not my fault. You like Uday a lot, and so do I. I don't blame you. But don't use a dual sharp-sided instrument.
Right.
Because what happens if they get a Bell's phenomenon when you're doing that? You're going to cut in whatever direction they, opposite, you're going to do it. So there's no reason to do it. And the dual-sided ones, namely like MBR blades, whatever, they will make a non-angulated incision. It'll be like this. Guess what that incision does compared to incision like this? Leaks more.
Yeah.
This one has a taper. It's kind of like a flare tip, isn't it? Ooh.
Right. Yeah.
Life is full of these analogies. They're everywhere. And it's so much fun to see them. So anyway, you make a side port blade and you don't put it in any further than you need to accommodate whatever instrument you're going to be putting through it. And that's how you minimize incision leakage. Let me tell you that if you make an incision that's too big, a side port, you'll lose 20 cc's a minute.
Well, it's a lot.
Through the side port.
That's a lot.
By the way, when we started doing phaco with things like the Master or the Cavitron unit, oh boy, back in 1971, 2, 3, it wasn't unusual to use 1,000 cc's. Had to change the bottle.
1,000 cc's through an AC of maybe an anti-second or maybe a quarter cc. So you're turning it over 4,000 times.
Yeah, the endothelium doesn't like that.
And we didn't have plastics.
The endothelium was designed to have a microliter per minute flow past it.
Yeah.
And you just ran 1,000 milliliters past it. What could go wrong here? Right? Okay. So it was crazy. Now, I think it's not at all uncommon for surgeons to use less than 50 cc's.
Yeah.
I mean, I often use 20 or 30 cc's for the whole case. That includes INA, which is, you can seal that incision easily because there's no thermal things. So, and then I started doing endothelial cell counts. Now, a word about endothelial cell counts. If you want to know how good a job you're doing in phaco,
okay,
you should do endothelial cell count post-op. Obviously, you have to have them pre-op to compare, but why not? But you got to wait a year to do a central endothelial cell count because redistribution of endothelium. Remember, I came in as a cornea guy. Redistribution of endothelial cells occurs, and it takes up to a year until they kind of normalize.
Mm-hmm.
So your central endothelial cell count will tell you. And once I sealed the incision, and we didn't have the types of OVDs that we have today that really were protective and remained on there. But my endothelial cell loss at 1 year was 1%.
Wow.
Okay. 1%. Now, consider that our human corneas lose 0.5% per year just by attrition.
Yeah.
Ta-da. Another eureka moment.
Right. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
It was great stuff. How lucky are we?
I tell you, you came up with more things that I use on a routine basis. The idea of having the Mackool capsular support system for zonulopathy patients.
Oh, yeah. Well, in New York, we have a tremendous Eastern European population.
Okay.
And so what do they have? Pseudoexfoliation.
Sure.
Tons of it. So I was doing hundreds of capsule tension rings per year.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
Per year. Yeah. I did so many of them. But so I got all these lax zonula. So I'm sitting there, with these patients, and I got the zonulac. I said, wait a minute. Let's do something here to stabilize this. What can I do? Iris retractors. I tried those first. Wrong angle, too short a return. Right. They slip off.
Yes.
The chamber fluctuates a little. I said, wait, no, come on. Let's look at the anatomy. What's the anatomy of the lens capsule? Well, it goes like this, and it's incisions here, right? And you want the retractor to go along pretty much the surface of the iris. You don't want it up like this where it can interfere with phaco, right? So, okay, I'm going to angle it down, then angle it over, then angle it back. I'll make it at least 1.5 millimeters on the return so it's secure. And otherwise, it's kind of like an iris retractor, except it's retracting the capsule. Eureka moment, put them in, said, my God.
Yeah.
Okay, these cases become like any other.
Yeah, no, it makes it's a huge. I did a case very recently. I could just put it on CataractCoach this week. Exact situation. And the one thing I did smart was I pre-placed the 4 capsule hooks inside the AC before I even started the Rexus. And then as I started the Rexus, I did a quarter of the Rexus and then put 1 hook in to hold it, another quarter of the Rexus, another hook, and then went all the way around.
Yeah, when you have a really super loose one, like let's say there's no zonule. I've done that. No zonule. Saying, hold on, how am I going to phaco this? There's no zonule. I guess I got to call the vitreoretinal guy. Nah, I am the vitreoretinal guy, but I didn't have to call him. So, yeah, what you do, first of all, opening the capsule is very difficult because the whole thing's mobile. So you can transfix it with a 30 gauge needle from each side. That's in one of my phaco tips, probably. I can't remember. But you go in from each side, and then you transfix it by using the 2 30 gauge needles. So you oppose each other and push capsule towards each other, and you get a hole. Okay, now you got a hole. You get in there and get just the beginning of a tear, put in a retractor. Go another 45 degrees, put in a retractor.
Yeah.
Where there's no zonule, you want to put a retractor in every 45 degrees. If you just have a weak zonule, you can do it every 90 degrees. And by the way, visco dissection you do for 360 degrees whenever you have a question of zonule deficiency. It just makes more sense.
Now, after you do that in a case like this, let's say a lot of phacodenesis, kind of global pseudoexfoliation, zonule laxity, you put in the hooks, you do the case. What do you like to do then to secure an IOL?
I thought you'd never ask. Okay, so you got 2 choices.
Okay.
And over the years, I'll tell you how I evolved into I only have 1 choice. Okay. You always put in a capsular tension ring of some sort, and you do that while you've got the capsule retractors in the eye. Don't take them out and put it in.
Sure.
You want it held there. Okay, you put in your CTR. And you put in your IOL. That's 1 choice. The other choice is to put in something like armored capsular tension ring segments in addition to the CTR and suture them in position. And nowadays, some people take the capsule out, they do a vitrectomy, they do a Yamani, overkill. Okay. I don't think you need to do that. I know you don't need to do that. All right. Now you're going to say to me, wait a minute. You just put it in a capsular tension ring and you went home, that whole thing's going to dislocate. Well, surprisingly, probably even most of the time, they do fine.
Right.
Yeah, the younger the patient, the more likely they are to do fine because they'll have a more solid vitreous. And that capsular IOL complex can adhere to stuff. And a lot of times, they don't even have pseudophacodenesis. And you're going, how could that be? I'm just telling you. I wouldn't have believed it either, but I've seen it. What if they do wind up with pseudophacodenesis, decentered IOL? You wait at least a month for the capsule to shrink wrap onto the CTR and then suture it on each side.
Right.
Very easy. Done it about at least 500 times. I mean, a lot of times. Works fine. So you can either spend a lot of time and do a lot of, armored suturing, whatever. And most of the time, at least half the time, it'll be unnecessary. But you won't know it was unnecessary because you did it. Yeah.
Sure.
So that's what I do. And I tell the patients, okay, now I put in the CTR. I say, we're going to wait at least a month and then we'll see, because you had these weak, I like to use terms that patients understand easily. I won't say a lens zonule. I might tell the engineers the name because they want to know everything. Right. But the usual patient, I say, the human lens is held in place by little strings. They're like cobwebs. And they go, oh, okay. Everybody knows what a cobweb is. Sure. Yeah, they're like cobwebs. And in some people, oh, you are Eastern European, aren't you? Yes, I am. How'd you know that, doctor? Just a guess. Okay. Now they think you somehow can identify their nationality by looking.
Right.
Okay. So then I said, then we put in a little stitch on each side and it acts like new cobwebs. And we'll see if we have to do that or not.
Very.
That's my story and I'm sticking to it.
I saw another case you did maybe 10 years plus ago. You had a patient with a 3-piece IOL, and one of the haptics had fallen out. And so you got some micro scissors and constructed a new makeshift haptic by cutting the edge of the IOL optic. And then you use that to optic captures behind the capsule, and it was totally stable. And I was like, I would have never thought of this. I mean, what you think differently than I do, for sure.
Listen, when you're in the middle of the desert and your car breaks down,
Okay.
you need a plan B.
Sure.
You got to have something up your sleeve that in your dreams, even your wildest dreams, if this ever happens to me, I'm doing that.
Okay.
Okay. And could I ever do that? And now I'll go back to this. If you really love what you're doing, your mind won't let you rest, which is not always a good thing, by the way. At 3 o'clock in the morning, when you wake up and you're trying to shut it off and you realize, I don't have any control over this.
Right.
I'm a bystander. I'm just watching my neurons do what they're going to do.
Uh-huh.
Okay, I might as well enjoy the show. Where are you going to take me? So, yeah, there are some things that I've thought, some of them I have never had the opportunity to try, whether they're in the field of cornea or cataract implant. Some of them I've tried, and believe me, you're not talking to somebody who everything they tried worked.
Right, of course.
Yeah, but desperate times call for desperate measures. And in the case you described, I had nothing to lose. Let me give this a shot, see if I can fashion this. I've cut up implants in the laboratory, and that's the other thing I want to go back to. The laboratory, the laboratory, the laboratory. Pilots don't learn to fly a plane up there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
God forbid. No. Because if they make one mistake, their career ended badly.
Right.
Very bad. Okay. When I was a resident, and I told you I did 5 months elective, but when I was a resident, 5 o'clock, everybody went home. I went in the laboratory.
Mm-hmm.
I just dissected eyes, pig eyes, cataract eyes. Oh, am I going to tell you a story?
All right, tell me.
This one. This is one of the great stories. And I can tell it because none of the individuals involved are still alive. That's when the real truth comes out, by the way, posthumously. That's when you really learn what happened. Anyway, I'm a resident. I was a second, beginning third-year resident at the New York Eye and Ear Infirmary. This is 1972-ish. And Charlie Kellman had his laboratory 50 blocks north of us. And he was giving courses to surgeons from around the world to learn phaco. Okay, I'm a resident. I got no money. I'm moonlighting to support a couple of little kids and whatever I'm doing. And I say, geez, how am I going to ever do that? There wasn't any special deal for residents, and it was way beyond my price range, right? Okay, so one of the other residents became very friendly with Charlie's laboratory technician. She was very nice. And he arranged that after hours that we could do some phaco surgery there. And in those days, you don't do it anymore, but it was generally anesthesia of cats. It was that because they have a very nice human-like thing. So in the evening, we took a $3 cab ride up to Charlie's lab. I never told Charlie this story. I should have. I should have told him, but it never came up. Anyway, we took this up there and worked on cat's eyes. And I learned a lot about phaco. And then I went back there and everybody said, what do you want to do? I'm going to do phaco. You don't know how to do phaco. I said, watch. How do you know how to do phaco? Yeah, true story. But laboratories are so important. And we've struggled a little in our field because we don't have a good model. General surgeons can do animals and, reconstruct and anastomos and vascular surgeons can practice and stuff. Our models aren't so terrific.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you can still, they're getting better. And there are some synthetic eyes that aren't so bad. And you can get good manual dexterity, especially with that second hand.
Right.
There's a big divide between surgeons who can use both hands well. I mean, I know there are things I can do with my left hand. I'm right-handed. I can do certain things with my left hand better than with my right hand. Now, yeah, that's just practice. I never
like using a phaco chopper. I'm really good with the left hand with the phaco chopper. Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
Especially as the right hand, even though I'm right hand dominant, is not as good as the phaco chopper.
I'll tell you another thing, by the way, that I lucked into. Is my sordid past. When I was in high school, I got enamored with the game of pool.
Okay.
I liked the geometry and the angles and the sights and sounds. And my neighbor had a pool table. So I spent a fair amount. I became very good, better than very good. All right, I admit it. At pool. In pool, right a hand, so what? You're just swinging the club, club golf is swinging a pool cue back and forth. Your left hand has to balance perfectly. The fingers, the thumb to support, right? Sometimes you do it this way.
Right.
Okay. Steady. Perfect. Yeah. Okay. My left hand was solid as a rock. So when I came to start to do surgery, I could do stuff with my left hand very well. Suturing was a thing that your left hand has to be pretty good at to do. And by the way, Charlie Kelman, one of the big reasons he invented phacos, he couldn't use his left hand hardly at all. So he was a one-handed phaco surgeon, and that's why he wanted to bring the nucleus up into the anterior chamber, phaco it there, didn't need a second instrument. But then along came guys like Dick Kratz, who said, nah, we got to start sparing some endothelium. 50% cell loss isn't good. And so he started lifting up the superior pole. It was the superior pole then because we all operated superiorly before we moved temporally. And that was a big advance. Yeah.
Right. There was some young surgeons may not realize that there was so much resistance to people even with the idea of phaco.
To the idea of anything.
Right. Why is that? Why are we so stuck in today's dogma when it's not going to be the future?
There's a phrase that some people are allergic to the future. But a more accurate phrase would be they fear the future.
I think that's your answer.
Yeah. And what they fear is they won't be able to keep up with it, that it will somehow leave them behind. And by the way, it will leave some behind. Some won't either have the capacity, the adaptability, whatever. But the majority, some will take more time than others to learn it. But overall, the future is inexorable. It's coming whether you like it or not.
Right.
There's nothing you can do. It's coming. So, life is messy. Get on with it.
Yeah, we all know there's that one, like even in Los Angeles, there's that one surgeon who still never did phaco and only does extra caps. Still.
Oh, yeah. Or wait, they're unnamed in this world. Intracapsular surgeons still.
Wow, that's mind blowing. I can't even imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. They're doing it the way they did it the day they left their residency.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. Now you say your brain, like mine, I'm always thinking, what's next? What's next? And you had an idea many years ago when we were trying to figure out how to do IOL calcs in these post-refractive surgery eyes, RK eyes or LASIK eyes. And you just said something so simple, which is take out the cataract, while they're phakic, they'll do their refraction.
Yeah.
Tell me the whole story. But this is such a smart move.
Yeah. And thus came the intraoperative autorefractor, which is basically doing that. The problem is the ones that are the most difficult to know what IOL power to use are not accurate with an autorefractor. They got other issues, or their cornea changes as soon as you do the cataract procedure, like in RK. So now you take a measurement, but yeah, that's fine. That's what works, 10 minutes after you took the IOL out, the cataract out, and the cornea has flattened, right? So that's when I decided, nah, the best way to do this, since I own an ASC at the time, in a hospital, probably never would have considered it as a possibility. I said, wait, we don't have to put this implant in right away. Let's bring them back tomorrow morning when the pupil's small and refract them. You get different results, and also better, sharper acuity, of course.
Right.
The pupil has returned to normal, and refract them. And if they've had RK, you'll say, well, wait a minute. Nah, their corneal curvature changed. How the hell do you know what to do? Just take a look at the two topographies, pre-op and the one at the time of the post-op refraction, and look at the change in mean K. And then say, well, it's going to go back to where it was. It can take up to 4 months. I'm going to put that into my IOL calc, that what I'm measuring now is in a cornea that's, 2 diopters is common, could be 4, flatter than when I started. And then I'm going to put in an IOL accordingly. It's going to get steeper.
Yeah, makes a ton of sense. And then you just take them back for a quick procedure just to put the IOL and you're done.
Yeah, this is such fun.
Yeah.
Come on. Again, I haven't said anything. If you say to me, Dick, you're a genius, I'm going to say, Uday, you're crazy. No, I'm not. My brain has just been running through all this stuff,
right.
Keeping me awake at night and doing whatever it wants to do. And I've been going with it. That's it.
Yeah, for sure.
I didn't discover a new periodic table of the elements here.
It's incremental change. Yeah, you're always thinking about it. You're always thinking, well, what can we do better? You're always thinking, what could be better here?
Which discipline can you add to the current discipline to come out with an improved discipline? That's most discoveries in life.
Mm-hmm.
They invented a boat that floats. And then somebody said, hey, you know what? I notice when I hang my laundry that the wind blows it. I'm going to put a sail on that boat. Yeah. And then thus came the Phoenicians. Right. Hey, I'm going to go around the world. Look what we can do. But wait a minute. If you go too far, you're going to fall off the end of the earth. Eesh. Who was the first guy that challenged that?
Okay, yeah, of course. Yeah, no, for sure.
How brave was that guy? Like the guy that ate the first raw oyster. He was probably an American Indian, by the way, because they did that. But you had to have a certain amount of bravery and courage as you investigate, tempered with some sense of, okay, what's the worst thing that can happen here? But
right. The first oyster, yeah, I was just thinking about that. So I was going to pick the thing up, open it up, and I'm just going to slurp it right there. Yeah, that doesn't sound so good.
I don't know that I want to eat that.
And that oyster is so popular, right? Everyone loves it.
Yeah. But wait a minute. There are animals in there that do eat that, and they're living. Maybe it works.
Yeah, no, for sure. Now, in addition to all these innovative things you've done in ophthalmology, you also built a huge practice there in New York.
Yeah, well, that was because I was the first ambulatory surgery center in the entire Northeast, really. There weren't any, not of any specialty whatsoever. And I'm going back to like 1981. I was at the New York Eye and Ear Infirmary, and I was doing phaco, quick procedures. Patients were staying in the hospital for 5 days.
Wow, for a cataract surgery.
But that's the only way that the hospital would get their maximum reimbursement.
Mm-hmm.
I went to the hospital. I did. No names. And I said, look, this is crazy. My patients are now asking me, why am I staying in the hospital? And I'm telling them there's no medical reason. And they say, well, can I leave? And I say, I'm not a policeman.
Yeah.
You could leave. So they're all signing out and leaving. And the hospital didn't like that. So what are your patients are leaving? We're not going to get paid. I said, look, there's a message here. They don't need to be in the hospital. My patients don't need to be in the hospital, and soon everybody else's. We should become the first place to operate and the patient goes home. They said, oh no, we'll lose a lot of money if we do that. I said, all right. Then they asked me to be chairman. And the department, I said, no, thank you. I have other ideas. And I built my own surgery center. And of course, every patient that knew that they could come and get an operation and go home.
Right.
Guess where they came?
They came to you. You came very busy.
Yeah. So I went from the, usual type of a handful of cases a week and some vitreoretinal cases a week. I mean, I did as many as 120 a week.
Wow, working hard.
Yeah. Yeah, but each time we got to a number, first time I did 25, everybody said, oh, you're going to do 25 today. I said, yeah, did. And we finished by lunchtime, I think. But I said, I think we do a lot more. So then some days we do 55, whatever.
Yeah, I know, it's amazing. And now you get the pleasure of working with your son, with RJ.
Now, big, huge pleasure. There's a nice, how should I say it? There's a pattern to life.
Sure.
Some people say, I'd like to stay young forever. My response, no, you wouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
No, you think you would. You would not.
Right.
No, you want to experience this thing we call life,
For
from
sure.
cradle to, unfortunately, grave. If there were no graves, guess what would happen? I mean, it would take a while. We'd all be on top of each other.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Forget about everybody would be at war. You'd be fighting over breadcrumbs.
Uh-huh.
So, there is, I don't want to get too spiritual here, but it's an obvious scientific statement even, There's a reason why the water planet has been around for a long time, and we're a big part of it. We could also ruin it, but, that's nature. Go with it. Go with it.
For sure. Well, Dick, I can't believe it. We've been talking for more than an hour already. Time flies when you're having fun.
I loved every second.
If you were going to give one word of what would be your ultimate legacy, you've contributed so much to ophthalmology. Like I said, today when I go to the operating room, half the things I'm doing came from some of your innovations. But what would you like to be remembered as the one thing for your legacy? It's something to think about. It's not so obvious. I mean, I think maybe it's like lifelong learning or keep innovating, or let your curiosity.
It's actually pretty easy.
Tell me.
My dad taught me how to love people, and everything came from that. I value life and humans. I don't have to stop and think about what I should do or why I should do it.
Sure.
I'm never conflicted. No. And it's in all of us. It's in all of us. The only time it disappears is when it's been somehow squashed in people. No. And that's it. It's a bigger thing than any one of us. It's the reason we're still here.
Right.
And we're so damn lucky, so much more than any of us realize.
Yeah.
To be around us. And, I walk into that room and I see that patient who's so relieved that I walked in, and they're looking at me as somebody that can help them. And I'm thinking, I guess I'm probably not as thrilled as this patient, but I'm a close second.
All right.
So yeah, but each one of you can remember yourself that way. It's in all of us. Go for it.
That's great advice. Really is. I want to thank you. There are generations of ophthalmologists like me who you really, from remote, you didn't even realize were teaching me. I'd watch all your videos, read all your phaco tips, follow you so closely. It really opened my eyes to what actually was out there. Because you could be in a small program like me where I did my residency and no one did any of these things. No one had a phaco chopper my entire residency. I never saw a chopper. So I had to learn from these videos from Osher. I learned from the writings of you, loved your lectures. you've influenced generations of ophthalmologists, which will, I'm sure, have accounted for millions of surgeries.
It's heartwarming to know that. Am I proud of it? Of course. But in this community of humans and all of the wonderful things that people have done for other people over millennia, all right, I'm a number on a board.
Yeah.
Let's not get too carried away with ourselves.
No, for sure.
It's great. And look what you're doing. You're in there pitching. Congrats.
Thank you. As you said, it's just intellectual curiosity, staying curious. I always want to learn new things, because you're right. There's happiness in learning, doing something new. And that's what it is.
It is.
Cool. Again, thank you so much for doing this podcast. I really appreciate it. I want to remind our listeners and viewers, remember, we got a new podcast every Sunday on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google, wherever you find a podcast. Of course, you find the CataractCoach podcast. And of course, we've got a new CataractCoach video every single day, more than 3,000 videos. And we haven't missed a day in 3,000 days. So until next time, I'll catch you later.